Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdala, even the French records say she's Mara Magdala and a negress, an Ethiopian negress. So Jesus was a black man, born of a black woman, and married to a black woman. And it's not true that he was, the mother was impregnated by the Spirit of God. They write the Bible later, ignore that story of creation, and they put the story of Adam, who is physically created by God.
According to the story.
According to their story.
Yeah.
And then from there, that God takes a rib out of this Adam and create a woman, which is all nonsense. There was also a philosophy of reincarnation, that there are people who lived in the past who can be born in small children. You find that a child actually is an older person, but is a child. They said, no, that should not be taught because people will not obey us as the imperial power.
King David Studio Podcast.
I have with me here someone I hold very highly, whose knowledge intrigues me, and how he knows so much it intrigues me as well. I have a former chief whip of the ANC many years ago, and David Mashabela. It's a privilege. Mathole Motshekga. What is your African name?
Nekrofo. Mathole Nekrofo Motshekga.
Nekrofo.
Yes.
Wow.
Nekrofo, you'll find that name amongst the first pharaohs. It's written in Greek, Nekrufes.
What?
Yes.
How did you inherit such a big name? Surely somebody must have given.
It's my guardian spirit.
Jeez. Is it a name that's found in your family?
Yes. In all my family, every household will have a child called Kirufo.
Okay.
Kirufo. Like his Kirufo is my son.
Okay.
My elder sister was Kirufo. And my younger sister was also Kirufo.
Yes.
Yeah. So the name runs from the 1700s.
My gosh.
Yeah.
But you say it has a link to, it's written in Greek and all of that.
Yeah, Nekirufes.
How does your people connect with this other nation?
We came from a place called Napta. Napta, next to the Nuba Mountains in the Sudan, which was the heartland of ancient Ethiopia. And that's why the people from that area came to be known as Nubians. And those are the people who created ancient Ethiopian civilization. And the ancient Ethiopians or Nubians created the Egyptian civilization.
Got you.
But, from that area, other Nubians went to West Africa, others to East Africa, others to the South. And that's why you would find empires like Mongale, Munomuki, Moana Mutapa, Angola, Benin, Zanj on the coast. All these kingdoms were, and the Kantasis of ancient Ethiopia, all these kingdoms actually came out of ancient Ethiopia. And these were the custodians of ancient African civilizations. So the Egyptians are descendants of indigenous Africans who originated at the source of the Nile. But you see, from the time of Abraham, who was a colonialist, you have the people called the Hyksos, who are the forebears of the Jews. And then you have the Libyans of Sheshonq. Then you have the Persians. You have the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs. All these people colonized Egypt. That's why the population of Egypt became so mixed. Today, you won't even recognize that those people are indigenous Africans, and they are called Copts or Coptic people.
Yeah.
And people don't even ask themselves the root of the word Copt, because it's Kapta.
Okay. Oh, from where they're from.
Yeah, in Greek, Kapta is Coptis. I was telling you that we originated in Napta. The word Napta, Kapta, and even the word Egypt derives from Ha-Kapta, the land of God Ptah. Wow. And the name Ethiopia, it comes from Atape. But if you say Tape or Tapa, if you reverse Pa and Ta, then you have Ptah. And there's an Ethiopian pharaoh, Sabaka, who discovered an old document called the Memphite stone. That stone later came to be named after him as Sabaka stone. That stone, today you find it in the British Museum.
Yeah.
That is the oldest document which talks about the origins of the world, how everything was created. But that document was published in 716 BC. But what happens is they write the Bible later, ignore that story of creation, and they put the story of Adam, who is physically created by God.
According to the story.
According to their story.
Yeah.
And then from there, that God takes a rib out of this Adam and create a woman, which is all nonsense. But we have been made to believe that story, and all of us, even those of us who are not white or Europeans, we believe we're the children of Adam. But if you go into history, or if you just make calculations based on the Bible, Adam was created in the year 4004 BC. By the year 30,000 BC, Africans had already built pyramids, temples. They've already invented writing. They had produced literature. Now, why on earth do we take the later story, foreign story, and make it our story, and then leave our true story that we have, which is documented? Because the Romans don't have a history. They are histories that with Romeo and Juliet, somewhere in the 700 years BC. Now, they got hold of the Jewish story and found that because they wanted to build an empire, they must use the Jewish story to say, no, all of us come from Adam. They want to use that to unify us. And when they got the Christian story, everybody was forced to be a Christian. But the Christianity that the Romans created is a materialistic Christianity, because it gives you a white woman who has a white boy child, and they say the white woman is the mother of God, the white child is the son of God. And that story was also false, because the mother of Jesus was not a European. She came from the family of Ptah-Lamu, Mary Amun. That's those two names you can't find anywhere in the world except in Africa.
Yeah.
But when the Greeks colonized Egypt, Ptah-Lamu becomes Ptolemy, and Mary Amun becomes Mariam.
Okay.
But you can't find the same name, Mariam, anywhere in the world except in Africa. So Jesus was known as Joshua ben Mary Amun.
Okay.
And Yoshu, that Yeshua in Greek is Jesus. Mary Amun is Mariam. So Jesus was called
The son of
Yeshua ben Mariam. And that's why in Ethiopia now you find a church called the Church of Mariam of Zion. But the other thing that people don't realize is that actually what is called, St. Augustine says that which is called Christianity never has not existed. It has existed before the beginning, from the beginning of time. Now ask yourself, where did it exist? That Christianity comes from Africa. And the name Christ is a distortion of the word harakte, which is also spelled xp-acte. In Greek, xp-acte is xp-ichtoch and is pronounced Christos. So there is no evidence of a word Christ existing anywhere except in Africa. And actually, you see the pyramids of ancient Ethiopia and Egypt. You also have the sphinxes. Those sphinxes are the oldest statue of the Christ, who was also called Uzara, the son of the sun. In Greek is Osiris. So that's why there was a fight over Christianity, because Jesus was not Christ. He was a prophet of the African Christ, and he was appointed by the great Kara, Solar Brotherhood, to propagate a popular version of Christianity for the masses. But that's why we distinguish between esoteric Christianity, which is kind of a secret doctrine, and exoteric Christianity. So Jesus was teaching the popular one, because the problem there was that people were rough, they were aggressive,
unruly.
Yeah. So Jesus had to teach something to tame the people. So he was sent. He was not sent by God. He was sent by the great Solar Society, which actually is a secret organization that came from the source of the Nile. And this great Solar Society was called, were called the Servants of the Sun, Shamshu Hara, and in Greek, Shamshu Hor, and then also called Horus Kings. That's why the eagle became the most important bird, because it symbolizes royal, the royal soul, spirituality. You can see also this, the Germans,
the Americans
use it, the Americans use it, but they don't know where it comes from.
Yeah.
You see, for instance, even the word royal itself, royal derives from Ra, which is the sun. So it's only Africans who say we are the children of the sun. The Ngunis will say Sibelanga, children of the sun. The Shonas will say we are Karanga, children of the sun. And on Lake Victoria, there's an island called Ukara, where our institute, Kara Heritage Institute, takes the name. That island is also called Uranga. Ranga is the sun. Or Ulanga, Langa is the sun. Kara is the sun. So that area, you find people who call themselves on that island Vakara, Vakaranga, Vakalanga, Wakaranga, Vakalaga.
It's all the same
Makalaga,
thing.
all the same.
All referring to people of the sun.
People or children of the sun.
Yeah.
And that's where even the Egyptians, when they moved up, they established a city called Saqqara. Sa means land, Kara, the land of the sun. And the people who go to West Africa, they have a city in Ghana, Accra, which is a distortion of Akara, which is the city of the sun. And then at Mapungubwe here and Great Zimbabwe, they had temples, African people, before the whites came. The temples were called Akara And then the Greeks say it's Acropolis.
Okay.
Even up in Egypt, they talk about Acropolis. And then the Arabs talk about Al-Akara. But all this means the city of the sun, or the city of the sun god. So we have better explanations of who we are, where we come from, how we got to where we are.
You've said a mouthful, but I want you to complete your thought. You're saying because?
Yeah, but you see, the materialist Christianity of the Romans, which is not about God, is about capturing people and promising them that if you believe in Jesus, when you die, you will go to heaven. And then there was also a philosophy of reincarnation, that there are people who lived in the past who can be born in small children. You find that a child actually is an older person, but is a child. They said, no, that should not be taught, because people will not obey us as the imperial power, because they will think they have another chance of coming back to life. So they banned that. Now, when they got into Ethiopia, there was a church called Pa Laka. You can see Pa means the house, Laka, the sun. So Pa Laka is like Zaun, which they pronounce Zion, is the city of the sun. And the oldest university in Africa was the University of Anu. And then in the Bible, they call it On. And the Greeks call it Heliopolis, the city of the sun. So the sun is central.
Why is the sun central?
The sun is central because, you see, as an African philosopher called Lord Kem, or Tau Harama in Greek thought Hermes, he says that the sun is the visible God, because the sun that we see doesn't have light. There's a sun behind it. That sun behind it is called Kara, which means spirit of the sun, or the divine light. So this sun is a transmitter of the divine light, and that's why all the African kings, or rather, let me say the sun, is called Fura, Pharaoh, and in the Khoisan language, Pariu. And that means the Sun King, or the King of Heaven. But it is also called Thobela ya Mashako in the Kilobedu language, which means someone who controls all the four quarters of the world. And that's why you have Radio Thobela. And whether you are in Venda or Haskukune or Bulobedu, Thobela, even when you greet, I'll say Thobela, which means I acknowledge the fact that you are the child of the sun. You are a royal person because you are a child of the sun. And you will say Murena, because Murena is another word for the sun or the heavenly being. That's why Basotho, they will say Murena Emoholo, meaning the king. The Xhosas will talk about Kumukani. The Zulus will say Isilo Samabandla. But Isilo Samabandla is the same as Thobela ya Mashako. And that's why African kings and queens were defined as divine or sacred beings. So we are closer to God as African people. And that's why we didn't make pictures of God, because we see God as a spiritual being, as a light being. But we have been given white pictures now. We think we are educated, we are civilized, we are godly, but when actually African people are not worshipping God. They are worshipping Europeans, icons. And then the same Bible, they say don't worship idols, But they've given us idols.
Yeah.
In our churches, we have all these idols and so on.
How did and the question is probably, the answer is probably obvious. How did we get captured so strongly by the European beliefs that was clearly, as you said earlier, to capture? It's more designed to capture than to free.
You see, when the Romans got into Egypt, there was a Christianity called Coptic Christianity,
Okay.
or a Gnostic Christianity. And now they felt that that Christianity doesn't serve their purpose, because it says that there's a divine spark in you, which is also called the indwelling spirit, the spiritual man in you. In other words, your body is really a vehicle for something that came from above. So you are divine. But they decided that that is nonsense. They defined it as paganism, and then decided that the real religion is that of believing in Jesus, who they said he died and he would got resurrected in 3 days. And that guy, Jesus, never even died there. The person who died was an African disciple of his called Simon of Cyrene. And Cyrene or Cyrenaica is Tunisia. So it's an African also who died.
Yeah.
But that African, two clever women, they went to the grave, removed the corpse of that Simon of Cyrene, so that the Romans should not come and see that they killed the wrong person and start looking for the right person. And that Jesus fled to Ethiopia with his wife, Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdala, even the French records say she's Mara Magdala and a negress, an Ethiopian negress. So Jesus was a black man, born of a black woman, and married to a black woman. And it's not true that he was, the mother was impregnated by the Spirit of God. But the thing is that the Romans were a strong army, and they take a decision that all other beliefs are pagan. The only religion is what they are teaching. And they got a soldier called Jerome, who wrote the Vulgar Bible. And that Vulgar Bible was amended or revised more than 1,000 times.
Okay.
But they said it was the word of God. Now, nobody ever had tea with God, lunch with God. When you revise the word of God, what do you put there? Because God is not there. So we've been fed with lies. And unfortunately, the attacks of African people forced us to to migrate to West Africa, Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, and all the time, now we were defending ourselves, sometimes even against one another, because it was a struggle for survival. So when these guys used the maps that they got from Egypt, maps which were made by Africans. For instance, we have the oldest map of 150 AD.
Okay.
150 AD, there was not even anything called Europe. But they used those maps to discover Africa. And then from the 1400, they started now going and so on. When they found us, they were going with their missionaries. And then they used the missionaries to soften us, to teach us. Whilst they are taking the land, they give us the Bible. Whilst when we are busy reading the Bible, they take the land. But now you can imagine that from 1652, when you are educated by a foreigner who tells you that what your grandparents are telling you is not right, and then you internalize that nonsense. At the end, you think that that is the only truth that exist in the world. And that's why our children now, starting with COSAS, they said, no, rewrite history. But now the government has a problem. The Department of Basic Education appointed a committee to rewrite African history. How do they do it? Because the real sources are hidden by the Europeans. They give us books written by the missionaries. And then you have to rewrite African history based on the falsehood created by the missionaries. I was in Cape Town a day before yesterday. The young Rain Queen phones me. She says, no, I'm debating with someone. He's saying this, and I think he's wrong. This is the right version. I was so happy that young kids are debating history. So I had an opportunity to say, you see, the history that they teach them will go to Europe, talk about capitalism, communism, the struggle between the two. But then when they come to us, they teach them from the ANC and Mandela. African people existed long before the ANC. And that ANC was even a product of the struggles of the African people. Now, if you teach our children that our history starts with Mandela, what are you trying to say? It means that Africans did not exist before 1652. So I think that the COSAS and other young people were right to say, let's decolonize history, decolonize the curriculum, because, we complain about state capture. Actually, the biggest capture facing us is the mental capture. Our professors are mentally captured. Our politicians are mentally captured. Our religious leaders are mentally captured. And unless and until we break away from that mental capture, there's no way that the African person is going to be free. And that's why you can see Africans are the best musicians. This jazz that they came up, all this genre, because most of these artists are not themselves. They are vehicles of the spirits of the ancestors. They get inspired. You sit here, you say you want to archive. Why do you want to archive? For whom? Because you have access to the stories. Why don't you simply say, no, I know the stories, I will tell my children. What is the spirit that drives you to say, this information is important for the future beyond you? So most of us are doing things, and we even call ourselves, I'm gifted in this, I'm gifted in that. But it is the spiritual world that is driving us. There was the Negro Renaissance, called Harlem Renaissance, in New York. Most of these Pan-African leaders used to go there. Nkrumah, Azikiwe, and even Mandela, they will say that they were produced by that. Kwame Nkrumah, Fidel Castro himself, he went there. They have a paper called Bohemia. So the spirit, the African spirit, is the same, whether it's in the Caribbean, Jamaica, and so on. But it is our ancestors that are living in us who keep on saying, no, this is the direction. But now media has become so strong that now those who controls the media now are the people who carry on the Roman agenda, which denies us our own spirituality, who we are, what is our history. And that's why the initiative like yours is really very important and a revolutionary initiative, because you want to tell stories which are not popular there, but those, if you want to rebuild Africa, those are the stories that we need. For instance, now the Indians are able to go to the moon. The Chinese can go to the moon, but they have the Indian story to tell. There's not even a Jesus there. They have their own religion. And as a result, they don't feel inferior to anybody or any religion. The Chinese, they have their religion. But the African religion and story is the oldest. But because we were conquered and most brutalized, and our leaders are the products of colonialism, are the product of Christianity. In the north, they're the product of Islam. They are captured by those two religions. So there's no space left for us. So I think that the work that we are doing is very important. And I'm very happy that you even discovered that young people, where the young people go for stories. And that is very helpful, because if they can access these stories, the world would never be the same again. You see, for instance, President Mbeki, President Mandela, they were talking about the African Renaissance, which was started by Pixley Kaisaga Seme, who was influenced by ancient African religion. Because, for instance, he said, I am an African. And he attributed the achievements of ancient Ethiopia and Egypt to African genius. And I had thought that when the Mandelas, the Mbekis, and other African leaders talk about African Renaissance, they will go back to Pixley Kaisaga and say, why does this man claim that we are the ones who produce the pyramids, the sun temples, writing? Because this Western alphabet is based on hieroglyphic writing. Hieroglyphic writing came from Ethiopia, Black Africa so-called.
Yeah.
And now there were 3 other types of alphabets. So the Greeks, the Romans, and so on, the Europeans, adapted our writing and produced an alphabet and come back to us and say, we're illiterate, we depend on oral history, we don't have a form of writing. Wherever they develop their form of writing from our writing. And then right now, if you go to Europe and America, they teach hieroglyphics. But in our universities, they can't teach hieroglyphics.
Why is that?
Because they are trying to say the authors of hieroglyphics were not indigenous Africans. That's why they even come with a story that ancient Egyptians came from Atlantis. And they say that ocean is Atlantic Ocean. But the old maps say that ocean was an Ethiopian ocean. And then they come here and say that you have Indian Ocean. But that ocean was the Zanj Ocean. And Zanj is the root of the word Azania, is the root of the word Tanzania, the root of the word Zanzibar, which is Zanzibar. So linguistically and otherwise, the whole of Africa is an indigenous African continent. And the people were indigenous Africans. Now you take Mediterranean Ocean. It was called Afar Ocean. The word Afar, like Afur, means in Hebrew is Ophir, which means the land of the Sun King. And then if you put Ka at the end, is Afar Ka or Afura Ka. And in Latin, Afura Ka becomes Africa. So even the word Africa is an indigenous word. They didn't create Africans. They didn't create Africa. So there are so many distortions. But now they say to us, education must prepare us for work. Whose work? So when our kids go to school with Indian and white kids, those ones are being prepared to create jobs, to be employers. Ours are being prepared to look for employment.
To be employees.
So they must be employed by them. schoolmates. So the whole thing continues and continues.
Let's go back to a time before, because we can go back far behind, but I'd rather a time before the 3 ships arrived to South Africa, for example, because I imagine in other African countries, there are ships that arrived as well. The story is probably very similar.
Yeah.
But let's focus on our story here in this country of ours. When 3 ships arrived, what did they find when they got here? Because surely, and I like the phrase that we find often that says, so and so discovered Africa, yet they found people living there. So when they found here, what did they find? And not only the people, but also their knowledge base. What type of people did they find when they got here?
You know, to start with, a map of 150 drawn up by Ptolemy, in Greek Ptolemies, says there is Egypt. South of Egypt, at where the Aswan Dam is. From that area down, that's Ethiopia. They call it Ethiopia infra-Egypt. So Ethiopia south of Egypt. The Arabs call it Bil al-Sudan, the land of black people. Now, south of the equator, they call it terra incognita. In other words, Southern Africa was called the unknown territory, terra incognita, but unknown to whom? To them.
Of course.
But with us, this area, terra incognita, was also called Akazimba. A means land, Ka means spirit, Zimba means the lion. The land of the spirit of the lion. Who is this lion? This lion is the sun god. So we were here, we believed in the sun king or the sun lion, Tawia Udimu, Isilo Samabandla, Morena Emuhol. Now, from the Zambezi to the Cape Colony, you have a map. This map says this was the land of Bakalaga. So, which means that before they arrived, we didn't have Zulus, we didn't have Pedis, Globedus, vendors. That's why when you talk to older people, like Wumau, Solomon Mahlangu, and others, but all African people, we are the children of the sun. But now, the first capital city, because the Khalaga Empire of Khalaga was founded by Moana Mutapa, or Monomutapa, who came from ancient Ethiopia. Then they said Khalaga came to be known as the Empire of Monomutapa. That empire encompasses Botswana, Namibia, Mozambique. All of us belong to that. And the Portuguese and the Muslim records testify to that. So it's not a story that we are inventing. They have that story. Now, you find that the first capital city was at a place called Maulwe. That is 20 km from Musina to the west on Mapungubwe Pont Rift Road. And they have discovered artifacts and graves dating back to 450 there. But that has not yet been explored. Professor Thomas Hausen of Wits had started, but he died. From there, the royal family moved to a place called Bambanyalo. The archaeologists call it K2. From there, they went to Mapungubwe. When Mapungubwe declined, they went to Great Zimbabwe. and then the interference in the domestic affairs of the empire by the Arabs and the Portuguese led to the breakdown of that empire. And then the north came to be known as Mukaranga, the south as Urozi. And most of those Wakalaga, they moved south and started this, the Zulu kingdom, the Pedi kingdom, the Tswana, and the Lesotho, and so on. And when these people come,
the three ships.
They meet our people, organized, civilized, being able to feed themselves. Now they look at the name of the leader. They say, oh, this one's, their leader is Zulu. And they say, these are Zulus. They find a leader is Mupedi.
Oh, and when you say this, the leader is Zulu, the leader's name is Zulu.
Yeah, the leader's name is Zulu.
Yeah.
They make everybody Zulu.
So you all become Zulus.
Zulus.
Yeah.
And then they go to Swaziland. Those Swazi people, they come from Natal. But because their leader now is called Mswati, they say these are Swatis. So you can see now the new identities. And then the Bebapedi of Skukune go to Mupedi. They find Bakoni there. They find Bambezi there. Now, they find David Mashabela and all these people. But because the person that who led the resistance
Yeah.
now yes. Pitori.
Yeah.
But you know that place That's why there was a problem when the language was debated in Parliament. There is something called Northern Sotho. Bapedi were no. We are not part of Northern Sotho. We are Bapedi.
We are not the Northern Sotans.
Yeah. And then Babang were no, Lernar Bapedi. Yeah, and that question has not even been settled today because we are fighting over identities which are actually not our identities. You know, I go to interacted with old people in Skukneland. We are Valozua Kalaka. And then Lozi just means great magicians because we make rain. And then whenever no Rawakalaka Balola. So Wakalaka who live in plain places. But what brings us together? Someone phoned me today, he's 8 years old. He says, no, he wants to meet me. Arno Narvanyai. But Rvanyai Wakalaka is from Venda. And however, you find Zonga people who say, Kiwanabanyai. Now, everything goes back to the sun. So the sun is a unifying thing. But because the root of the word Africa is Ra, Ra is the sun god, which means the word African is the most uniting word. And if we all could just learn before we give ourselves labels, we are an African people. And this continent is an African continent. But now, some people have taught us, even educated people in this country will tell you that we are black South Africans. What does that mean? Because
they say that?
Yeah, we are black South Africans.
Yes.
The thing is that we are Africans. But you know, with our policies of accommodating everybody, we are afraid that we are Africans. We say we are black people. And you are not black, for instance, when I look at him. He's not black. Now, how this generality that we are black, we are not black people. But they have put this thing in our head because if we accept that we are black, we must accept that they are white. So then South Africa is a land of black and white people, which is not true. South Africa is an African country on the southern tip of the continent. We must accept that there were European settlers that came in, they conquered us, they defined us, and today they want to control the narrative. In the north, the Arabs conquered, it's documented, it's there. They conquered Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, they conquered the Sudan, ancient Ethiopia, and some people even say now the war in the Sudan is actually not the war between them. It's a way of exterminating the indigenous people. And that's why African people should be interested in what is happening in the Sudan. This is our cradle land. But all of us are more interested in Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But that is a political interest because we had an alliance with the PLO, Palestinian People's Organization. But it's not wrong to place solidarity with your friends, but you don't support your friends at the expense of your own. Because right now, there are guerrillas insurgents in Mozambique. We never marched in support of Mozambique. And there is the situation in the Sudan. We don't march in support of those people. There's Boko Haram in Nigeria. We don't march against that.
There's Hamas in Gaza.
In Gaza, yeah.
And we raise our voices.
But we raise our voices, but not about our own, I think. We are not saying that is wrong. But you cannot, when your house is burning,
or your neighbor's house is burning.
Yeah. Then you go to solve the neighbor's place. When you come back there, your children are gone. So I think it's our psyche. There's something wrong with our psyche.
But do you fault us if so many years and so much effort has been done to try to change the way we see the world? If you spend a considerable amount of time in changing a generation and a generation after that and generation after that in terms of how they see the world, and now you come 20 generations later, you can't be surprised when they're gone.
I'm not surprised, and I don't think anybody should be surprised. But you see, the first struggle of African people was a struggle against slavery. Although there's still some practice of slavery, but I can say we won that first struggle. The second struggle was against colonialism because we were physically subjugated. But after gaining political freedom, we thought we have arrived, and we haven't arrived because the mind is still in bondage.
Still colonized.
So that's why you need younger people who are radical, who are militant, not the younger people who believe just in slogans. And if you can look at our politics today, is really trying to pull one another down. And we forget that the only thing that can free Africa truly is the unity of the African people. But instead of getting united, every African who is hungry wants to form a political party. How do you explain the fact that we claim that democracy comes from Europe and from America? And in those countries, the political parties are not more than 5. In Britain, they are not more than 5. In America, in France. But South Africa, which became independent just 30 years ago, has more than 40 political parties. Are those things political parties or just groups led by individuals who are seeking power and resources? Because, there is ample time to debate in Parliament. You listen. There's no content. You don't know where they want to take this country to. And that's why they would come together and say they want to form a coalition to replace the ANC. But they don't tell you, replace the ANC and put which program on the agenda. So that's why I'm saying the opposition politics in this country are wrongly placed. If you looked yesterday, the drama in Parliament.
With regards to the appointment of a public protector.
And you see hooliganism at play in Parliament. Now, our kids who sit and watch those things, how are they going to respect the so-called Parliament? What is happening there? It's not happening in the American Parliament. It's not happening in Britain. It's not happening in France, in Germany. Now, which democracy is this that we're following? But you see, there is a hand behind. There are people who are funding different individuals to form these political parties, that we continue fighting amongst themselves and forget that our land and natural resources were taken. At the moment, if you can get into a chopper, fly over Gauteng, Gauteng is becoming a big slum. In 50 years, this place would be the most uninhabitable place. Instead of African people in Parliament working together, demand that the land which was stolen from us must be returned to us. The Oppenheimers, the De Beers, are all over in Skukuneland. They are all over in Northwest, digging out chrome, platinum, and everything. And when they finish digging, they leave holes, they leave. The people there have not benefited anything from those mines. And these mines are not going to be recreated, which means in 50 years or 100 years, all our minerals will be gone without benefiting us, because we are busy fighting amongst ourselves. Like, if you put cakes here, the white people are sitting around this table eating the cakes. The little things that fall on the floor, we are fighting not for the cakes on the table, but for the crumbs below the table. That's what African leadership is all about. That's why there are all these coups. And, basically, I subscribe to the AU position that we must silence the guns. There should not be coups on the continent. But if you have situations like in Niger, in Mali, where small French boys are controlling African people, and the budget is controlled in France, and they decide who must rule the country. Now, how do I, in my clear conscience, condemn the coup in Niger? Actually, with respect to the leadership of the continent, I believe that we must have more Nigers. Our people in West Africa are actually the most oppressed. And you can't liberate this continent unless you liberate West Africa. Because their budgets are controlled in France, then France dictates to the AU, because those people will not vote with you if you are making a resolution that touches on France. And those other Arab countries, they won't vote with you if you make a resolution that touches on the Arab world. So the African unity becomes a pipe dream. So my view is that we must educate the youth on the true state of Africa and why we got to be captured in the manner in which we are captured, and encourage them to be radical and militant, but informed radicals and militant. Because there are some young people who will say they are militant, they are radical, without knowledge. And that's why you'll find that some of the young people, they specialize in insulting the older generation and even saying that now is our time to eat. You must get out of the way. And that applies in all political parties. You know, this youth wave, because I think people were inspired by the spring.
Seniors.
Yeah. But you see, in life, there are generations. Our young people, first and foremost, must acquire knowledge so that when they go into politics, they must go into politics informed by the challenges facing their people and the continent, so that they don't become politicians because they want to eat, because other people have eaten before. They become politicians because they want to solve the problems facing their people. When the Tambos and the Mandelas got into politics, they were young people. They were lawyers, but they didn't become lawyers to make money for themselves. They armed themselves with knowledge to liberate people. And they never enjoyed the fruits. You know, Mandela served one term. Tambo died.
He was never in government.
He was never in the Sisulu. Was never in government. But our problem now is that I personally want to benefit. When I join a political party, it must help me to get into positions, and then I must make money. My children must go into Model C schools, and so on. And you can see that our generation of politicians who took our kids into those Model C schools, our children are not following in our footsteps because they feel that they come from middle-class places and they feel entitled, and the leaders that emerge don't emerge from the children of the they come from elsewhere. So we have a problem. So
you're saying, sorry to interject, the history, knowing the history, because that's where we started. Knowing the history of where we come from better informs this fight.
Yeah.
And I call it a fight deliberately because you're using words like militant and radical.
Yeah.
Because if you don't truly get it, because the perception is that South Africa has always been like this, as in demarcated with different cultures, different tribes. The perception is, well, when those dromedaries and Rooigat or whatever those names were came to South Africa, they found us exactly the way we are. And then when they found us like this, they merely enforced that or won small battles and took over places in that way. And you're saying that the knowledge of that history is important for where we're going.
It's important because, for instance, you have the Balobedu. They came from the Monomotapa Empire, settled in what is called Vendaland, before the so-called Vendas arrived there.
Whoa.
From there, they moved further down to the area of Zanin. But the first Rain Queen, who took over in 1800, was popularly known as the Rainmaker.
Okay.
Chaka would send cattle to pay tribute for rain. Mushweshwe will send cattle.
Wow.
Skukune would send cattle. Mswati will send cattle. And now you want to tell me that these people did not know one another. All these kings, they knew that as this Mujaji.
Who is able to create a rain.
Yeah. And then Shaka defined her as a four-breasted woman.
Okay.
Who controls the four corners of the world. Mabele Mane. Which means he acknowledged her. Mushweshwe marries Makado in Vendaland, marries the sister of Mushweshwe. So the idea of South Africa with these diverse people they found it there.
It's always been there.
It was always there. And these people were working together. The problem started when the Portuguese and other people started to raid people on the coast to catch them and sell them into slavery. And then Shaka says, to defeat these people, we need to be united. But he was reckless because he wanted to unite people by force. Instead of sitting with people and say, we have a new enemy. How do we work together? Then by using force, then the Shangans split and go to Mozambique.
And the Soshangans come from the Zulu.
Yeah, they are the children of Zwide, Zwide Kalang, from there. And then the Swatis break off. They went to Swaziland. They find Bagoni there, Basotumola. And then because they come from conflict, they were ready to fight. And those ones were sitting peacefully, developing, eating. The result is that those who come armed, then they displace them.
They win the fight.
They won the fight, and those people then come into Skukule and come into Palamura and all those things, Baya Uzanin, and then everywhere. Like, the Mashishis, somebody was saying that actually Mumukopan, Nele Batuvalaga, ba Likalaka, the Bamashish. But today we say Gimkopan.
Yeah.
Because Maburu Amafika, Valwilele Makapan Mukopan.
Okay.
But Mukopani be snaya high. But now the place is generally in Gimkopan. Vale Kala le Mashishi. Then
they lost.
They lost. So I'm saying these people didn't find us on the trees like monkeys. We were settled communities and able to produce even iron. That's why we could make spears.
True.
And we could make, bangles and things like that. So that's why they even call that time an iron age. We didn't learn iron from them. We could mine, for instance, in Joburg, they say they discovered gold. Our people are digging gold here at Millville Copper. They were mining copper in Kimberley. So there's nothing that they discovered. They found us with all these resources, took them over, and write the history in a way which suggests that they discovered us, they discovered these things. But the problem is they are the ones who then came with the Western education. They are the ones who wrote those books and wrote these false stories into the books. Now, all of us, even our professors and everybody, they can talk without quoting a European. So education means that you must know more about Europe than yourselves.
That's a loss. And the Khoisans, which part of history do they fall in? Because very often we find, even very recently, they were protesting to be acknowledged, even the language to be acknowledged. Where in this history do they fall? Because very sadly, they continue to become a forgotten nation in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you see, unfortunately, if you go into history, ancient Egypt of about 400 BC knew about the Khoisan and that they were at the southern tip of the continent. And you will find ships from Egypt on the coast of Mozambique, because they said from Mozambique southward, it was the land of the Khoisan. And those Khoisan pharaohs were called Parihu. And they were dressed exactly like the ancient Egyptians. So now the colonialist wants to suggest that the Khoisan were just subhuman things. They were not civilized, and it's not true. But again, the problem is that when the Bantu groups moved further down, they found the Khoisan. But what is interesting, Motshekga used to say, "Ona lebo pofolo lebotu," and say that we must treat the Khoisan kabotu because the Khoisan are our forebears. And I don't know how you would explain that. But if you look at the paintings in the caves and so on, you find the history of the Khoisan, and which goes to very far in antiquity. And they are short, but they draw their ancestors as tall people who got stunted sometime in the course of history. And these people in the secret teachings of Africa, they are called Wundoro or Wundorondoro, which are called the lion people, who are also called Vantare or Vantarentare, which means the children of God. But they are also called Vakare Kare or Vakale Kale, which means the most ancient ones. So which means that the most ancient part of the world is Southern Africa. And the people moved from the area of the Great Lakes, source of the Nile, and spread elsewhere. So the Khoisan are very much part of ancient African history. But when these other people come, they meet with them, they call them Hottentots, Bushman, and they raped their wives and produced a colored population, and they reduced them to nothing. But Motshekga would say, anybody who ill-treats a Khoisan person is ill-treating our ancestor, and that person must be sentenced to death. So African people respected the Khoisan as their elders. That's why, if you look at the Tswanas in Botswana, Northwest, Northern Cape, they are light complexions. You can see that they're a mixed people. They mixed with the Khoisan because they settled there and intermarried with them. You look at the Xhosa, these cliques of the Xhosa, they are actually the Khoisan cliques because they intermarried with them and settled. So the Khoisan have a history which was neglected, and that's why now they are asserting themselves, saying that we are the first nation. I think they are right.
Why is it that they're having difficulties with our current government, for example? And this question goes back to a point you raised earlier, that when we as Africans take over power, one on the agenda is to get all power, including that of the land and that of our own cultures. But why is it that we seem to be struggling with this very simple concept?
You see, I think the problem is that once they start asserting their right to land, then some of our leaders get threatened and want to suppress that. For instance, I was saying that the Khoisan had a divine kingship, very advanced astronomy, and their kings were actually pharaohs, but they pronounced that as Parihu. So the whole sun-centered philosophy of the Egyptians, these people had it. They even know the stars. When they do their rituals, then they dance around fire, which fire symbolizes the sun. For instance, in Bolobedu, when you install a queen or a king, you first extinguish the fire and light a new fire, which means the new ruler is the representative of the sun on earth. And now when there are rituals, the light becomes central. And the same thing with the Kisan and other African people. Because if you look at all Africans, now we celebrate New Year on the 1st of January. Well, who are we celebrating? Because the rains come in September, and in October, we hold rain-making ceremonies. And then in November, we celebrate nature conversation. In December is first fruit celebrations. And then in March is harvest celebrations. Now, they gave us a Roman calendar, Gregorian calendar. The Romans didn't even have a calendar. When Julius Caesar conquered Egypt and fell in love with Cleopatra VII, he learned about the African calendar. And then from there, he asked someone to adapt it for their use. But because the seasons differ in the north and in the south,
Of course.
they make it upside down. Their summer is our winter.
It's our winter, yeah.
And vice versa. And then they gave us the version of the distorted calendar of the West, which actually is a copy of our calendar, which they distorted. But if you can go to any community in South Africa, Zimbabwe, Southern Africa, they will say that the year starts in September. Ask them why. Because in September, at the dawn of the new moon in September, there are 7 stars that appear at the center of heaven. These stars, in Kilobedi will say Kilimela. The Pedi will say Slimela. The Tswana will say Slimela. Basotho will say Slimela. The Zulus will say Izilimela. The Karanga will say Chirimela. The Kalanga will say Slimela. So that celestial worldview unites all of us. So if we were to celebrate New Year in September as African people, that would be the first basis for our unity. And why do we celebrate that when those stars appear? Because we say, Isilimo, Shirimo in Tsonga, Chirimo in Venda, Silimo in
The
Tswanas. Now, even the season, our season, is named after the celestial sphere.
True.
And now, those 7 stars, they form a circular wall of heaven. Inside there, you have the highest being. That highest being is called Tapa or Ptah. Tapa is the root of the name Ethiopia. Ptah is the root of the name Egypt. But that is, Tapa and Ptah is defined as the one or the good that we call God. But this one of the good is an unknown and unknowable God, which manifested itself as the Queen of Heaven, Muwari or Muwali Wedenga. Now, that Muwari Wedenga is Karanga, Muwari is Karanga, and Muwali is Kalanga. And the Sotho people say Muhali or Muhali. And that Muhali or Muhali is called Nwari in Tsonga. It's called Nwali in Venda. And then that Queen of Heaven is also defined as the Most High, The Most High in Ndebele is Zimu. In Karanga and Venda is Muzimu. In Soto, Kimudimu. So, when these people came, we believed in the higher being. That is not even a human being. Kimudimu, Kimuhale, and so on. That's why you have Mahalis Mountain, Mahalisberg, named after God. And that goddess is also called Magore or Magole or Malundi or Maluti.
Okay.
Then you have a country called Burundi. Rundi or Lundi means the sun, defined as the needle that weaves together heaven and earth.
Okay.
Now in Zimbabwe, you have a river called Lundi, and the Limpopo River on the Botswana side is called Undi. In Gauteng, you have Odi Muretele, that Odi is Undi. You have Malundi Mountains in KZN. You have Intabazaga Lundi in the Eastern Cape. You have Maluti Mountains in Natal, in the Free State. And you have Maluti Apofu. But if you ask the people, why this Luti, where does it come from? Because we ignore our language. People don't know what it means. So our religion is also reflected in the names of the mountains and the rivers. And that's why, when I met Tambo in the 80s, he was talking about the new name for South Africa. He would say it must be the Republic of Maluti, the Papyrus of Maluti. If we had renamed this country the Republic of Maluti or Malundi, we would be forced to teach our children who is Maluti, and which means our spirituality would be embedded in the name of the country. But because we failed to do that, today, if you can do a referendum, most of the kids will say South Africa is Mzansi. That thing, Mzansi, is so popular.
Yes.
What does it mean, Mzansi? It just means South. There's no content. And then others say South Africa must be Azania. Why Azania? Actually, the word Azania was the name of Abyssinia, which was called Zanj or Zenj. So when African people moved down the coast, they carried that name to the south, to Zanzibar, to Mozambique. So South Africa cannot be Azania. And the word Azania or Zanj means the root or trunk of the tree, referring to Ethiopia as a motherland. But now, this naming has been politicized. If you go to a referendum, the ANC people will reject Azania.
Of course.
And
because
then,
it represents a different political position.
Yes, but you ask them, if you don't want Azania, what is your name for South Africa?
Mzansi.
They will end up with the Mzansi. So we are losing a lot because we don't try to find out. For instance, in Zimbabwe, a king is called Mambo.
Okay.
You say, why is a king called Mambo? That Muwari Wedenga, the Queen of Heaven, has a child. The child is Mambo Wedenga.
Okay.
Mambo Wedenga is the king of heaven. Now, the king on earth comes from Mambo Wedenga. Therefore, the king on earth is also called Mambo. But also, the son is called Mambo Wedenga. So we are the children of Mambo Wedenga. So our languages are rich. And they also reflect our spirituality, our religion, which is much more superior than this Christianity that we're given, which has just confused our people. If we were to define religion using our own languages and our own history, we would find that we have a much deeper spirituality, comparable, if not better, than the Chinese and the Indians.
When you tell the story, and I found this often in a lot of your stories, where you say the history of Africa has at its core a female leader. Mm-hmm. Even now, when you were talking about a god and the queen, you made reference to a female than a male. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about that.
Because you see, there is no being that can be a virgin mother. A virgin mother is someone who is both female and male. And that's why that female is called Mara or Maria. Ma is female, Ra is male. And that's why that Mara gives birth to the son Ra. And then Mara and Ra becomes mother and child. But the mother created everything through the child. So when we say our creator, we don't refer to the mother, because the mother created the son, and the son created us. So we relate to the son and relegate the mother to the background. And as a result, when you go to religion, you find the concept of Black Madonna and child. Even the Mary of the Bible is called Black Madonna, and Jesus is called the child. So the Catholic Church preserved that idea of a God who is a woman, who is a son. But you see, the mistake is that they made that woman a human being and the child a human being, but white human beings, and distorted it. But the other thing as well is that the Romans used religion for political purposes. Because when they got into Egypt, this Gnostic or Coptic Christianity was a unifying religion. They hijacked it and used it to create an empire. So Christianity became a imperial religion, and then they came with a theory that you see, the emperor and the pope are the representatives of God on earth. So everybody has got to listen to what they say. If you don't, they would kill you. Then from there, everybody was afraid, and then you follow that religion of imperial religion. The Arabs come. They say Muhammad is the last prophet. Muhammad married an Ethiopian woman. And then an Ethiopian man called Bilal helped him to create a religion. Yesterday, I was looking into the sky with my wife. You see the new moon. Inside it, you see a circle, a disk, mounted on the lunar crescent. Next to it, you see a small star. Now, in ancient Ethiopia, they will take the sun disk mounted on the lunar crescent and say that is a symbol of the Virgin Mother that gave birth to life. That life was symbolized by a baboon or a velvet monkey called Sogo, or Sogo Mbekara, or Sogo Mbire. Mbe is the word, Kara is the divine light, Mbi is the word, Re is the sun. So Mbekara manifests itself as Mbire. Then the monkey is a symbol of life. Now the white man comes and go to Magdalene come with a skull and say that, you see, the skull is our ancestor. For us, the monkey is a symbol of life because Africa use symbolic references.
Yeah.
But now these people, our own government will give them millions to go and do research there and continue consolidating their lies. And those lies get into our books, and those books get into the school children. And our children now, they don't know whether to believe the Bible, which we say we come from Adam, or this story that we come from the baboons. So there's confusion in our schools. So I'm saying that we have a spiritual worldview and a celestial worldview that before we start talking about ourselves as human beings, physical beings, we must also talk about our origins in the spiritual world. Because we are first and foremost spiritual beings, and the spirit dwells in the body. That's why the fight in the Christian church at the beginning was that the Romans teach you that you see, believe in Jesus, because if you believe in him, when you die, you will be resurrected like him, resurrected in the physical form. And then even that Jesus will come back.
We've been waiting.
We are still waiting. But now, if Jesus is going to come back and we are going to be resurrected here, why should we want to go to heaven? Because everyone starts here and is finishing here. But Jesus did not teach what they are teaching. Jesus said he wanted to teach people the redemption or salvation of the inner person, which the independent African churches, when they broke away from the Western churches, they said they believe in the indwelling spirit. So the difference between these indigenous African churches and the whites say that when you die now, it's finished. Unless if you believe in Jesus, you will be resurrected.
True.
The Africans were, no, when you die, we live at the moon. So we are not dead. We are joining the ancestors. So there is another world out there. And that's why Africans would say, when we leave, we must conduct ourselves properly, because our spiritual ancestors are actually the ones who govern our material existence. And they don't want violence. They don't want all these evil practices. And there are taboos, which says you can't do this way, you can't do this way. So those taboos are more important than the 10 Commandments. Because even those 10 Commandments, Moses was a black man, and there's a lie that he was picked up in the water. The father of Moses was a Jewish slave, which had a relationship with an African woman. This African woman, the slaves were low people. She couldn't go and say, I have a child with a slave. She said, I picked this child in the water.
That's the story we know in the Bible.
Yeah, and then they raised this boy, and he was a colored. They say he was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. And then he studied at the University of Anu, Heliopolis. And everything that he knew and taught the Jewish slaves, he got from Africa. And now these 10 commandments are 10 out of 42 commandments, which are called negative confessions. And now those 42 commandments, you see, there is a ladder of stars or chain of being that links the child of God in heaven with us. And now that chain consists of 7 stars, which I called Slimel, and the 7 planets. They form a chain of 14 rungs. So our 4 souls come from heaven through this ladder. And then from each of the 14 ladders, the soul inherits 3 moral laws. So when your soul gets into a body, embedded in your soul are 14 times 3 moral laws, so that the real Bible laws it's inborn in you. You don't need to read the Bible or the Quran. These things are in there. Now, the older people, through their oral tradition, will use stories, will use songs to remind you of these things that are already in you.
Give us an example of that, because we've been taught to know the 10. Give us an example of some that are outside of the 10 commandments, for example.
You know, they will say, pour libation to your ancestors who lie in the valley of the dead, so that your children can do the same for you. Now, when people, African people, before they drink, they will pour something on the floor. Libation. Habayopasa. They pour liquor there. Yabadi. So they are sharing with Badi. What the Bible says, it says, love your mother and father.
So your days will be extended, something similar.
Yeah. So it's about the extension of your days. It has nothing to do with the ancestral world. So it becomes a secular type of thing. And then they will say that don't violate the graves. Don't interfere with the assets of the temple. So those laws are still there in a book called the Book of the Divine Light, Pert Emheru. But now a British archaeologist called Wallis Bard take that book and call it the Ethiopian or Egyptian Book of the Dead and say, you see, this Bible of the African people talks about demons, dead people. And then they replace it with their Bible. Where does the word Bible come from? It's a sun book. Sun book in Greek is Heliobiblica. So Bible means any book. But they have appropriated this name for that book of theirs and says the Bible is the word of God. There's nothing like that.
Going to, because African ancient literature, is it well documented, these knowledge that you're sharing with us? Can it be easily acquired, or it's hidden away somewhere?
You know, luckily because white people like money, although this information was hidden, they bring it bit by bit. So it's there. But it will be printed in America and all these people. I went to London several times. There were bookshops where I used to get these books. The next time you go there, it's no longer there. They sold the rights to another company in America. So it's a struggle to get these books. But they are there. And it's just that the popular education and media wouldn't promote those books. And where a reference to them would be a reference to pagan literature. Pagan is heathen, and who wants to be associated with pagan and demons?
We are at a point in the world where very easily we could be facing another world war. There's pockets of it everywhere. The war in Gaza is an example of that. It's something that we did not expect, but maybe some did because it's been brewing for so long. There's a lot more misunderstandings amongst humans now, probably any other time in history. We've had Ukraine, and you've mentioned some of these pockets of African wars, so to speak, and I'll use that reference. Where is the mindset of humans now in terms of our history and where we are? Are we at a point where we're imploding because of this continuous lies we've told ourselves?
Exactly, because you see, Moses, because he was brought up by the pharaohs and he was colored, he had no reason to believe that he's not part of Egyptian royalty. Now, he wanted to succeed to the throne, but they say, no, this man is our...
He's not one of us.
It's not one from us.
Yeah.
Although we raised him. So Moses fought with the Egyptians. That's why even the Bible says that he killed an Egyptian. But because Moses was more linked to the Africans than to the Jews, he ran to Jethro. Jethro was an Ethiopian, an African. He even married there. And he also went to the Sudan. He established an army to fight the Egyptians. Then he got defeated. There was a ceasefire to say to end the war, just pack and go. Moses was allowed to pack and go. And it is a lie that he went through water, God split the water. It's a lie. There's nothing like that. And he took all this knowledge from Egypt and used it as the basis for his Bible. That's why indigenous African people believe more in the stories of the old Bible than the new Bible. Because you see, these Jews or Israelites in the new Bible, in the Bible, were actually not Europeans. Go back to Abraham. He had a woman called Sarah. He didn't have children with her. When he got into Egypt, Egypt was ruling by indigenous African people. A pharaoh called Amenhotep III. And then he said, for his security, he said Sarah was his sister. And that pharaoh fell in love with that Sarah. They had a child called Isaac. So Isaac, like Moses, was a colored. Isaac had children, Esau and Jacob, who were coloreds. And then Jacob becomes Israel. That's why even today people say that they are black Jews. Because indeed those Israelites are our descendants. But now they went into Canaan and they wanted, they knew that the riches in Africa, and that's why there's always been a struggle between them and Egypt. So, but Moses lied, or somebody who translated the Bible lied, and said God gave Palestine to the Jews. There is no God who can create all of us and send other children to go and kill others to get the land. So the God of the Bible authorized a colonial conquest of Palestine
By the Jews.
by the Jews, authorized the killing of the Palestinians. Now the fight starts from there. And at least the Palestinians compromised and said, we will accept a two-state theory. Let's partition the land.
True.
The borders were there. But what are the Jews doing? They continue invading and taking the land of the Palestinians, provoking them. And they use the Bible to justify that conquest. So you will never end that war, the Israeli Palestinian war. And you are right. It is going to lead to a third world war, because now these men that I respected, Biden, I think it's not worth my respect or anybody's respect. He goes to Israel without listening to the facts. He says that we are fully behind you. And his army is sending ammunition. That ammunition is used by the Israelites to kill the Palestinians in Gaza. And that Biden says we will provide humanitarian assistance. In other words, kill them, but those who survive,
we'll give them food.
We'll give them food and all this thing. What thinking is that? But which means that their religion is a source of conflict. But now, you see, the Arabs, they say Abraham was given a wife, Hagar. Hagar was an African woman, an Ethiopian woman. She gave birth to Ishmael. And the Arabs say that they are the descendants of Ishmael, which means they are also our grandchildren. Now, the Israelites and the Arabs were born of our people.
True.
But now the Arabs have taken over the whole of North Africa, and the Jews, they've taken our minds here. And that Israeli-Palestinian war is coming to South Africa not long, because the Boers and the British said that God gave them this country.
Yes.
And now, as we speak, we only have 13% of the total surface of South Africa.
As African people.
As African people, we are actually landless. And now, unfortunately, the political parties that we have, the ANC say we want to return the land to the people. The ANC says, the EFF say we want to return the land to the people. But they don't agree on the how.
The methodology.
The methodology.
Is that where we start?
Yeah. And then they fight amongst themselves. Whilst they're fighting amongst themselves, the white people are grabbing even more land. They are building these gated buildings and so on. As if
they're digging more underground to fetch the resources.
Yeah, the resources, as if they are preparing for a coming war. And that war is going to come. Because you see, Africans remain the majority. And right now they say youth unemployment is a ticking time bomb. But these youth are not going to tolerate this forever. And they are not going to listen to the slogans of the EFF or the ANC. They want a solution. And then they will go to fight. The white people are armed. They will retaliate. And then these young people, now guns are available. They will go also and arm themselves. Then you are going to have a white and black conflict. You see, I know my party, the African National Congress, say we must create a non-racial society. But you see, you can't create a non-racial society between the poorest of the poor and the richest. It will never work. So if we want to create a non-racial society, what we need to do, we must address the land question fairly. The majority of the people must have more land. The majority of the people must be skilled to work the land. The majority of the people must be able to produce food and feed themselves. Right now, you have children who die of food poisoning from food from the spazzers. Who is supplying the spazzers with their food? We are eating chickens from Brazil, and that Brazil which send us the chickens, then you get a ship full of cocaine from the same country. Do they love us? If they love us, can they send us the chicken that spent 3 months in in the ship and send us cocaine? Is that not an attempt to exterminate us? And somebody will argue that, no, it's not the Brazilian government, it is the criminals.
Yes.
But when the ships leave Brazil, is the government not interested? Where are these ships going to? Because that would be exports. What are they exporting? To whom?
Are you saying that what we're seeing with Gaza and Hamas in this context, invading, and I'll use the phrase deliberately because that's what they did, a surprise attack on Israel, is something that could play itself in this country very easily?
No, it's going to happen because the root problem is the land.
And that's the root problem in Israel.
The root problem
is land even here.
And here, our poverty, we talk about triple challenge of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, is because we were violently dispossessed of the land and its mineral resources.
Same story in Israel.
Exactly. And the land is not coming back to us. The natural resources are not coming back to us. Now, for how long are African people going to tolerate that? Our generation will tolerate it, and the elite in this country
will tolerate it.
Will tolerate it because they have been absorbed into the
Western way of
Western
looking
way.
at the world.
If you go to a waterfall, you know that place is secured. There's a Mall of Africa inside. There are top restaurants. All the younger generation, well-to-do, are there. They are dining and doing all this type of thing. But they also forget that land where waterfall is a land that Paul Kruger gave to an Indian family.
I know there used to be cattle on that land for a while.
Yeah,
Yes.
And then the Indians say that we don't sell land. But after 1994, we were supposed to expropriate that land. But now you can't expropriate it because
it's been developed.
South Africa is developed, and South Africa and India and Brazil are in BRICS.
Of course.
So you can't do that against the people that you're working with. And I tell you, all those younger people that are living there, they are on a long lease.
99 years.
99 years. And they're not sure how successful their children are going to be. So one day their children will be homeless.
When that lease comes to an end.
Even before the lease comes from an end, if they lose a job, they can't maintain that standard. And their children maybe are not even educated. Their children will have to move out into the mikukus. They're going to be so depressed that they will commit suicide. So that thing is not development. It's actually underdeveloping the black people, making them feel that they're secure, they've arrived, and there's no arrival.
While we are on the subject, because I think in South Africa, we also have the political class, driving in secured cars and so forth, and live a life that creates a facade that all is well. And that may lead to not seeing reality. And reality of a South African man and woman is that of poverty, it's that of struggle, it's that of we can't even afford the price of bread on an average day. And those are the reality of South Africa. And I've asked this question many times, and these are your colleagues. Why is it that we can't see this? Because this is as obvious as driving out the gate now. You're going to see a man at the corner asking you for 5 rands.
Because, you see, we are engaged in a hand-to-mouth situation. We are struggling just to survive. And now the politicians benefit from the fiscus. They and their children don't have the problem. And to stay in power, they keep on promising these poor people that vote us will change the situation. When we are in power, whether you are DA or ANC or EFF, We give people food parcels. Food parcels are not solving the root cause of the problem. Now, I say to myself, imagine if the EFF was to become government tomorrow. What is it that they can do differently? They go to universities, they recruit students, but they don't have a blueprint to say, these are our economic policies, except that we'll take the land. And then...
what is it? The banks, the banks, and you name it.
And you can't take the bank...
Everything should be run by government.
And if we can't even run municipalities, even the municipalities that they co-govern with the DA or with the ANC are not run properly. And there's no focus on education and a clear plan to say that is what we want to make out of South Africa. You look at the DA, they specialize in criticizing the ANC and in saying that Western Cape is better governed. But if you look at Guguletu, Ilanga, those people are still in a worse position. So what is it that the DA can do for the whole of South Africa, which they fail to do for those township? Each time when there's a flood, the African people there are swept away.
True.
If there's fire, the African sheikhs are
burnt.
Are burnt. Yeah. So I'm trying to say that nobody actually is telling us the truth.
Including your own colleagues.
No, you see, the ANC, everybody says that the ANC has good policies and so on. It tells the truth about those policies. But the people that are deployed to implement those policies are not implementing those things. Then they focus on tenders. That's why you go to Feta Communes, Kukuneland. It's corruption. You go to Waterberg.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere is corruption. Now the question is, much as I believe personally that my political party is the best and has the best policies, the question I put myself, have we produced the best people to implement our policies? I would say no, because we focused on getting numbers. At some point, we said we wanted 1 million members. And all these unemployed people join, not because they believe in what we're saying. They think if they are inside, they will rise into position, become mayors, become everything. So then you have a membership which has not bought into your vision, into your plan, which came in order to look after themselves. Even, ordinary people in the Bantustan in Vanderland, that we establish a viable VBS bank. Who brought it down? The people who should be leading the country to a better future are the one who brings down this thing. Do they have an alternative? There's no alternative. So I think, therefore, that re-education of our people is very important. That political parties must move away from slogans and educate people and make sure that they don't admit into their ranks people who are politically uneducated, who come into their ranks for reasons other than what the organization stands for.
I was hoping that you and I will not talk politics, so I'm going to stop.
Oh, okay. No. You see, these things are related.
They are, and I see how we ended up here.
Yeah. Because it's the question of Palestine.
True, absolutely.
The land question here
is similar.
It's going to take us there.
Yeah.
I think we talk politics because it is the politicians
True.
that can change the situation. So you can write politics out of
out of everyday stories.
Out of every story.
Even the water we open in our taps, there's politics.
Yeah, but let's go to culture quickly.
Yes. Actually, I don't know which direction you want to take. Actually, let me let you take a direction you want.
I'm saying that I said that African culture and heritage is the richest.
Yes.
And, even Mandela in 1994 was disappointed when he was given the Reconstruction Development Program, RDP. He said that document focused on political and economic things and ignored the arts, culture, and heritage, which are the mainstay of the African soul.
True.
So in other words, Mandela realized that if you want to build a nation, it must be rooted in your arts, culture, and heritage. But we didn't follow him. To help us, he said that he made a clarion call for RDP of the soul. And he founded the moral regeneration movement. But the people who were in charge of the moral regeneration movement used liberal human rights values, not the arts, culture, and heritage of Mandela. So that's why that moral regeneration movement failed dismally.
Of course.
And now, just recently, in 2021, the African Union adopted a theme which says arts, culture, and heritage are the levers for building the Africa that we want. So which means that the African leadership realized that you cannot build a nation without its culture and heritage. But the people in government on the continent are either Christian or Islam. They are not fully committed to the African culture and heritage. And therefore, that theme cannot be realized.
What do we lose if we lose our culture?
If you lose your culture, you lose your being. You lose your soul. And Sretse Khama said that in 1970, people who don't know their history and heritage are a people without a soul. And Mandela spoke about the RDP of the soul. Xi Jinping said that a nation must have a soul. So African nations are nations without a soul. So for us, the soul has become a slogan. But we don't realize that we must reconstruct and develop the African soul, because inherent in it are our ethical and moral values. Politicians will talk about let's create ethical and moral leadership.
Of course. It's a slogan.
It's a slogan. And at the end, the religious people will criticize politicians and say they are not providing ethical and moral leadership. Amongst themselves, they don't agree as to which morality.
Isn't morality universal? Shouldn't it be the same for you? What's right and wrong, surely
exactly.
It should be the same for everyone.
If you are a human being, you must have conscience. Letswalo is a mechanism planted in the human being to help the human being to distinguish between right and wrong, or good and evil. So before you read any book, already in you, there's a mechanism which tells you what is good and what is evil, what is right, what is wrong. And in addition, there are those 42 negative confessions. So the Bible, the true Bible, is inside us.
True.
And that's why black people have the rites of passage. They know that before year 1 and year 7, this is what the children must be taught. Between 7 and 14, that's what the children must be taught. And from 14 to 21, this is what the children must be.
Give us an example of one of those ages and what children should be taught.
You know, between 1 and 7, a child struggling to learn the language, is struggling to walk, is struggling to understand the environment, and the old people will tell stories. These stories is really the educational tools for these kids. They will teach them songs. Between 17 and 14, 7 and 14, the children also become to be sexually mature. They have to teach them about sexuality, not in the vulgar way that is happening today. They will take the girls to initiation. They will take the boys to initiation. They will get the boys and girls to play together. I don't know what to say, but
Yes.
Yes. They use them to try
playing house.
Yes.
Yes.
Socialize them that the ultimate goal is that we must grow and have families. So they teach them all those things. And then from 14 to 21, these kids are very sexually active. And then they also would get older women, older men to mentor and bring these kids up. And they will tell them that when you are 10 to 21, the Zulus still do it. So they admit you into adulthood. But they have prepared you from year 1 up to that point. But now, today, we say there are these human rights. We teach children about sexuality. We even say that they have the right to choose whether they want to be boys or girls, whether they want to be lesbian or what, and so on. But one then becomes suspicious. Why are Western countries prepared even to fund African government which are prepared to promote that agenda? If I come and say we have rites of passage, that's what we do from year 1 to 21. They won't fund me. And even my government will not fund that. But they will fund a human rights which promotes this Western agenda. And the question is, what is the end game?
Do you have a sense of it? Do we have a sense of it?
I can guess like you do that, you see, these people tried many means to destroy the African people. And African people are not only the oldest in the world, but the toughest people. You know, where they came, for instance, during COVID, they would give us expired vaccines. And personally, I thought that at the end, the whole of Africa will be wiped out. But there are more people who died in Europe and America than here. How did Africans survive? They turned back to their cultures and traditional things. Bashumisalengana, umhlonyan, and majority refused to vaccinate. But they're still alive today. And you go to Europe now, the birth rate is at its lowest.
True.
And now the West is threatened by Africa. You see, they say Africa is the youngest continent. So the future is
Africa.
Is Africa. So that is their problem. Now they want to confuse us, and we say a family is the basic of society. So we have to socialize our children to know that they must build families which will become the basic unit of society. But if someone comes from America and Europe and say, no, you can marry another man, you can marry another woman, a woman can marry another one, and then if you just raise something against that, they will burn you alive. They say you are intolerant and so on and so on.
Of course.
But these things, these things were there before. But we didn't go out to make that a policy, that there was a way of dealing with the situation. For instance, you know, when you have a boy child, the older women, they would wash this child, and then let me smoke. And then
the phrase it's been there for a while.
Yeah, because they want to make sure that this child doesn't have a problem at the erection at the end and so on. And then if they detect that problem, they would deal with it. But the idea, they want to bring up a man. These women, Baba Isago initiation. And then Baba Rutaga a relationship with men. So our educational system was meant to build the family as the basic unit. But what the West is bringing to us is not in that direction. And so I think they are trying all means to destroy the African family and the African people, because actually what they need from us are our minerals and our land, because we have more arable land, 60% of the continent, and they can't feed themselves without Africa. You can't build a plane without minerals from Africa.
Can't even build a car lately.
You can't build a car.
Yeah.
And that's why the more they can underdevelop us and create confusion in Africa, the better for them.
Let's talk about the family, because it's an area that you know very well about, the dynamics of an African family. And we spoke about it very briefly, where you made reference to a leader of the family. You and I spoke on radio once about a Rakadi. Let's start there. The role of a Rakadi, who's the older sister to the son, so to speak. Or maybe you can define it probably better than I can.
You see, whether we like it or not, there would be no humanity without the sun and the moon.
Yes.
The sun is Ra, his father. The moon is Ma or Maia, is the mother. So the sun and the moon are the children of the Queen of Heaven. Now, for procreation to proceed, there must be a relationship between the sun and the moon, which means Ra and Ma, which gives you Mara or Maria. And now, which means the brother and sister, which is the sun and the moon, the sun and the moon, are the first parents.
Okay.
Now, but that moon is the sister of the sun. Is then the aunt of the children that are born. But when the family spreads now, you find that brother and sister are the model. and then the sister then become the most important person,
The Rakati.
Rakadi.
Yes.
And even the word Ra is the sun, Rakadi is the moon. Now, Rakadi
It's still titled male in its texture.
in texture,
Yeah,
but
because Ra is an adult, is a male.
yeah, and
Yes.
Rakadi is a female.
female,
That's
yeah.
why I was talking about the virgin mother. But now, Rakadi is the custodian of the culture and heritage. And as a result, when the children are born, they are better brought up by the mother or the Rakadi. So they become the custodians. And of course, even the boy children are brought up by these women. The men fathers come later. When these kids are grown, they go to the mountain and so on. So, which means that the African family is father and mother. Now there's marriage. You go and marry into another family. Then you have the in-laws. And now you also have the Malumis, who are the brothers of your mother. So they become your male mothers, so to speak.
Okay.
So the uncle becomes the most important person. When the aunt Rakhadi is not there,
Not around.
the uncle steps in and plays the role of the Rakhadi. But at the same time, they say if you want to talk to the ancestors, you have your father's side and your mother's side. So you belong to both sides.
It's true.
So you must talk to the ancestors from both sides. And then on your father's side, you have the Rakhadis. And then on your mother's side, you have the Malumis. Then you see the Malumi and the Rakhadi take center stage. And those are the basic values that must be inculcated in young people. So also when you grow up, the problem of your uncle is the problem of your mother. So you have to look after your uncle. Then you have Batswala, your cousins. They would even say that you must go and marry your aunt's children. So you can see building that family becomes very intricate. But the Zulus have developed a culture that no, don't marry cousins because you produce a weaker breed. But also this system of marrying cousins, apart from being rooted in the culture, but it was also used for security reasons.
Okay.
For instance, when Shaka wanted to give Mujaji cattle, she says no. Wanted to give Mujaji women. She refused and said, give me cattle. Because women can be plants.
Okay.
You bring the women there, they collect the information and send it back to those people. When they attack you, they even know where you put your weapons and everything there.
True.
Like, you see the way the Kekanas took away the land from the Lekalakala people in Mukopan. The Kekana people, when they found the Mashishian, the Lekalakala people, who call themselves Bakoni, now they ask for land. They give them land. Then they say to the chief Yawalekalaka, how can we thank you? No, that chief says, no, it's up to you. They say, no, we'll give you a woman. They gave the chief a woman who became the second woman. Then from there, they say, no, we can't be your subjects because you are our in-laws. We can't be ruled by our in-laws. Now, what must happen? It means they want to be the chiefs. Then they send that woman there to go and poison the chief and his children so that there's no successor. Then from there, the Kekanas took Mukopane. So, Haisale na yabakoni. So, that's why the Mujaji say, no, we can't take the women from KZN. We can take cattle. But you see, they will take women from Venda because they're related with them.
Okay.
But you see, the Bapedi come from Botswana. There's a place called Tswapo. And if you go to Bulobedi, you find Batswapo, who came from there. So they integrated there. And Batuam Malebo, Kiba Malate, when they came into the Transvaal, they knew the most famous owner of the land, Mujaji. So they went there via Mujaji Verno, Ritlo Itzibis. Then Mujaji says, okay, I'll give you a chief, a woman. Knowing that Magoshi Abahanano, Vetaba Vanaba Musadi Mlovedu. And that's why when Malebo was attacked, Mujaji bought arms in Mozambique and trained people, sent them to go and help Malebo. And when the Boers conquered Malebo, they arrested people, so they were furious. Balata Mujaji. But no, we're going to deal with this woman. Again, causes your problem. Ever Fikagamula, Mujaji bought arms and you see what Wamakoba. From there, Batsama Batlamuri Tabin. So Mujaji accepted them because that was a buffer between Bulobedu and the Boers in Petersburg. And then Mujaji said to Makoba, Lebulitswalo, Lebumu boy, or no, take your women and children. Lebati say into the eastern side. And then we'll train them as soldiers. And then she organized arms. And then when Makoba was fighting there, then Mujaji was sending warriors, heavily armed. So when Makoba was killed, Mujaji committed suicide and said that my greatest soldier is dead. It means we are defeated. What am I living for?
What am I to do?
So when this Pete Joubert and them went to Bulobedu, they say they want to punish Mujaji. That was Masalana number 2, named after the current Masalana. They wanted to punish her for supporting Malabo, punish her for supporting Makoba. And she didn't understand that these people are related by Bijaba Khalaga. And she had to support those. Now they want her to surrender. She said, I will never surrender to a white man. And then she sent an old sister. Those boys see this old sister. She brought some copper and says, we are sorry for that. Take them. And Maburu Alevara, that thing, but you never repeat this again. And then Mujaji, on the other side, felt that the war is lost. She drank poison and died. So those are the stories which are nowhere to be found. You know, yesterday, the caucus of the ANC went to a place called the Liberation Route. They identified people mostly from KZN, Eastern Cape, and Habatla Limpopo, Panotopa, Batla Runale Charlotte Manya, Unale Lillian Matavata, and then abide deeper into the history of those people. Bumujaji are not even mentioned, but when they go to the coast, they detail these things. That reminds one of this slogan, the people living with disability. Nothing about us without us. Dali Tambu knows about Kara Heritage Institute. He knows that we deal with these things.
Yeah.
But they never talk to us about the history of Limpopo. They don't talk about the people of Limpopo, about who are their warrior kings and queens and so on. So which means that the new government distorts the history. Now, if we have to rewrite the history, we are again going to write a wrong history. Until the approach, in my view, should be, they should say every province must tell its story. And then these stories can be collated and we meet at the top and do these stories.
Rather, historians sit around the table and debate.
And debate. Yes. Because you see, the history of Limpopo becomes complex because you have Mziligas coming, conquering, doing all these things. You take Tswane here. They will say Tswane was the king of the Ndebeles. But Tswane ne ele Motlokwa. And ngwana hae ele Mamelodi. So Tswane Mamelodi ya Tswane. But there are rivers are Tswane ya Mamelodi. But ke Mamelodi ya Tswane. But now the Ndebeles who came later and conquered will come and say, no, this was our place. Because we conquered the people. Now, what about the history of the people you conquered?
True.
Because they have a story to tell.
It's easy to just rub it off and start after the conquering.
After the conquering.
Yeah.
So it means that we still have to revisit the history of this country. Even the naming. You say Limpopo. I had running battles with the Limpopo government. When they had to get the name, it was Northern Transvaal. Now, the choice was between Mapungubwe and Limpopo. I say, where do you get the name Limpopo? I find that they read a book by an Afrikaner woman who says Limpopo is a Ndebele name, which means kupopoza.
Okay.
I say, but the Ndebeles came very late in the area. The Botswana said, Nukaigi ki Odi.
Okay.
And the source of this river, Odi, is here in Johannesburg. You know what you call Jackskay River?
It runs across from this very office.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, the vendor and the Shona called it Wembe. Now, what is interesting, Odi is the same thing as Lundi or Luti, which means the word of God. And then Wembe comes from Umbe. Mbe is the word of God. So which means this is a sacred river. And even where it comes from. Now, if we were to give it the true African names, whether it's the Tswana name or the vendor name, we would thereby be recognizing our own religion. But I don't want to be tribalistic.
I guess you lost the debate.
Yeah. But you see, the person who was driving the process was a Tsonga-speaking person who could not associate with the name Mapungubwe. And he felt very angry when I was pushing it. I was also even telling him and his team that Limpopo actually, it's not a Ndebele name, is a corruption of Lebombo.
Yes.
Lebombo is a mountain separating Mozambique and the Transvaal. And these people could not pronounce Lebombo. They say Limbombo. And then now the word Limpopo is a corruption.
So Letembisa.
Yeah, exactly.
Many of those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, unfortunately, some of our politicians tend to be tribalistic or to be ethnic nationalists. They want to interpret history to suit their tribal affiliations.
Of course.
And as a result, we put them in power, but they use the power to distort things further.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that we want young people who must not just be led by slogans, but who must go and study, find out, talk to old people so that they are informed. Because the truth must remain truth, history must be true history, and not a history that suits certain people. You know, for instance, you will have people who think that Chaka was about to unite the rest of South Africa, who even believe today that actually this South Africa must be, in one form or another, be a Zulu empire. Shaka failed to unite the people in his province. And when he went to Lesotho, people came from the rest there. The Eastern Cape was not under him. Free State was not under him. Kukune was not under him. No one was under him. So how would he have been the king
of everyone?
Of everyone. And he himself never understood himself as the king of everyone. He worked and interacted with other kings and recognized them. And that's why when the ANC was formed, it was Kukune who told Mpande, I said, you know what? The bigger enemy is these white European settlers. When we keep busy fighting amongst ourselves, we'll finish one another and they will just walk in and take the country. Let's be united. So the idea of forming the ANC came from these kings who realized that African unity is important. Now we formed that organization, we resisted, but now our conduct is to destroy the very basis of our existence, which is that African unity.
The very reason you started.
So I think education and re-education.
Yeah, but we spoke earlier about education and we agreed that maybe the type of education is also an issue, is what the young people are taught. Because half of, if not most of the information you shared with us today doesn't exist in our education system.
You know what, on the 29th, we are launching Kara Heritage Saturday School. I'll ask him to send you our brochure.
Yes.
I don't know if you have it.
Do you have it yet? Yeah.
We, in that Kara Heritage School, we have developed a storyline that as Africans, we have an independent stream of history, culture, and heritage. And that we also had our prophets older than the Western prophets. And that actually what they call Western civilization is what was stolen from us and distorted. And you can ask me, who is our first prophet? You have a river called Zambezi. Z or Zambezia, Zia means wisdom, of Zambe. Zambe is symbolized by a crocodile. And then that crocodile is a symbol of the word of God. You have Zambia. That Zambia comes from Zambe, the same crocodile. And then you have Mozambique. That Zambi comes from there. And Vembe, Mbe, comes from the word of God. So for us, the question of the word of God, which in the New Testament they say, at the beginning was the word was with God, the word was God, is part of our culture and our heritage, is in our language. In Rosalind, Zambe is called Nyambe. In Angola is Njambi. And then in the DRC is Zambe. There's a music and a DRC singer who sings something Zambi way, Zambi, and so on. They sing about that. So even in our music, we sing about the word of God. But somebody comes and he gives us another word of God. And they change that word of God into a white man and says Jesus. And then we start to worship Jesus. That Zambi is a spiritual being, is a light being. So when I say education, I really think that we need a new generation of scholars which don't take their cue from these European books, because these Europeans are cunning. If you look at our books in the schools, are written by Macmillan. They are written by the Dutch, by the British, from a Eurocentric perspective. So, which means they are still capturing us further, even now. That's why I'm in South Africa with all these educated people, including President Mbeki and this Kofi Annan. Also, President Ramaphosa, did you see them kissing?
Yeah, kissing a hormonal lady.
Hormonal lady.
Yes.
Then they say that is the ancestor. Because they're so captured. At the same time, the same people go to church and worship Jesus.
Do you believe that, because we've been called the cradle of humankind, is that story a true reflection?
You know what? Africa is the cradle of humankind. And the records that exist say we originated at the source of the Nile.
Yeah.
And actually, it's tricky when they say the source of the Nile, because the Nile starts from Burundi, from Uganda. But that river also exists underground, right down to the south. So this thing that there's a cradle of humankind in Africa, they remove it from where it is and take it to Maropeng here and create another false narrative that we originated there. I can tell you can go to Skukuneland, you can go to Natal, Botswana, Lesotho. There is no African person who will say they originated here. They say we come from the north. That's why you have Bagoni. Bugoni is north. Mugoni is a person from the north. So even in
the north is not in Limpopo. It's
further
up.
Exactly. When we are in Limpopo, they point further up. And it takes you to the source of the Nile, the area of the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
And archaeology and ancient records confirm that indeed that is the cradle. Because you see the Ethiopians, Nubians, say that they originated there. They call it Tamera or Punt or Kumara or Buntu. And then the Ngunis call it Kantu. But now the Ethiopians, as the Greek authors are saying, the Ethiopians are the first of all humanity. And these Ethiopians are also called Nubians. They are the progenitors of the Egyptians. So the Egyptians and the Ethiopians come from the source of the Nile. Now, all these Bantu, so-called Bantu people here, they say they come from there. So you can say that this is one family. But because the civilization in Ethiopia and Egypt was well advanced, these Europeans don't want to accept that even those Ethiopians and Egyptians got this from African people. They start stories that civilization come from Atlantis. So because we read their books, then we perpetuate that lie. But if you read the ancient Greek writers, they all say they were educated by Egyptian priests. And Egyptian priests are descendants of Ethiopians.
Of Africans.
They're black people. But the Europeans will not emphasize the Greek version of history. They will go to Hegel, who will say Africa is the land of childhood, and Africans have no culture, they have no history. But if we go to archaeology and ancient literature, it is the Germans who were barbarians. But the same people call us barbarians. It is them who were pagans, but they call us pagans.
I guess it's the definition is relative.
Yeah. Now, at the end, they come and destroy our civilization and come back and say they are civilizing us. What is that civilization? They couldn't read and write. They have no book. Even paper, which they say is Western, comes from papyrus. It's an African plant. But they will prefer to say paper comes from China or India because they can't accept the fact that Africans are the ones who produce paper, writing, ink, all these things. Even today, they don't understand what the Sphinx means. But if you look at that Sphinx, it has the head of a human being, which is man, the paws of a lion, the wings of an eagle, the body of a bull. Those are 4 parts in the Bible. They are called the cherubim, 4 holy beasts before the throne of God. The Muslims say that these are the Al-Karubian, 4 holy beasts before the throne of God. And popularly defined as, in the Bible, they say this was a vision of Ezekiel or Isaiah. But they got that concept. Both the Arabs and the Christians, Europeans, they got this from Africa. So that Sphinx, these 4 parts represents the 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air, which constitute matter, mat. But inside matter, there is a spirit. That spirit is the ether, is the 5th element. Therefore, that Sphinx there represents the union of spirit and matter. That's the first materialization of a spiritual being. But even today, they don't know what it means, but they want to claim that their ancestors created what they don't understand.
Amazing. Do you know, I listen to it and I realize we can go on forever, which is not a bad thing. However, I want us to stop here.
Yeah.
And let you have these type of conversations further on hopefully future platforms that you will be creating yourself that are quite similar to this one. Because my biggest worry about history from the position that I occupy is that it's very easy to lose it. Life is so unpredictable.
Yeah.
Because the people who hold it don't share it. And as a result, we lose it. And I continue to pray and hope that you will create platforms where you will share this type of knowledge, and you will gather those that are similar to you, that will continue to share this type.
No,
of
you make a mistake. You see, I'm 74.
I realize. Interesting. When I was checking your
old.
profile, no, but you look 62.
Maybe I pretend to be 62. That's why, I always talk about education and young people.
Yeah.
I prefer that younger people must take from where we have stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you see, the Bible talks about the Adamic lineage, Noah and so on. But we had our lineage of people called the gods, Neteru, of the first time Zebtebi, older than the Adamic lineage. But we left our lineage, we adopted the white lineage, and our children and our people cannot accept. If you tell them that they're not the children of Adam, they will kill you. They want to be the children of Adam. So that's another thing that in rewriting history, we should be able to show that we were there before Adam.
True.
We were more civilized than these people. The little civilization they have, they got it from us. I always say that it's better for us, if we are lying, it's better for us to tell our own lies to our children other than allow somebody to lie to our children. Because you can't correct somebody's lie.
Yes.
But your own lie, you can revise. Yeah.
You were here to fix it yourself. And when it's somebody else's lie, you don't even know the basis of the lie.
You don't know. So I hope that, I didn't know that there are people who think that what some of us are saying is worth recording.
No, it is. I think it's worth sharing. It's worth sharing on a continuous basis. And purely because we believe, as humans, life can be such a complicated exercise. You wake up every morning to your own struggles. There is really no time for lectures that are revolutionary in your own life. Because you're trying to solve your daily challenges. And as a result, that's why we create platforms like this, so you can listen to the conversation as you're minding your own business. And that's really why such conversations are important. But for me, it's when we lose the education and lose people who have the knowledge.
For me, I never had friends of my age group. When I grew up, I associated with elder women and men who would tell me Direto. From Direto, I could trace my lineage. And when I worked after matric, and then I worked with a certain man called Maleka from Skukuneland. He will talk these things with me. I was young, 19. He was in his 50s. He became my best friend.
Wow.
And when we parted, and then I associated with people who were 100 years old, and they would tell me about things. So I've been connecting the dots all the time.
Jeez.
But now, when I look at our children from Mathole schools, they can't speak their mother tongue. And now the knowledge is with the aunties, the Rakhadis, but the Rakhadis don't understand their English. So there's a communication gap.
True. A big one.
So I think that you are archiving a thing is the best thing that we can ever have. And I think we are delighted to know that there are younger people. You say you were born in 1975.
I'm at 75. I'm not that young anymore.
No,
I wish for my youth, but it's long gone.
My second born was born in 75. But he doesn't have the consciousness that you have.
Yeah.
Because when I talk, you'll just think that, this old man wants to take us backwards and so on.
Well, I guess with time, the perspective is very different.
No, but I say keep up the good work.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Maybe sometimes you must tell me how we can take this thing forward. Because you see now, I speak about everything under the sun.
True. And then then it's time to compartmentalize.
Yeah, yes.
And say, today the subject matter is
this
one.
Yeah.
Imagine a conversation, hour-long conversation on Rakadi Fail.
Yeah.
Or Rakadi Malum, for example.
Yeah.
And then we move to the history of the Zulu nation.
Yeah.
And the role they played. And the history of, because I remember in planning for this, a friend of mine said, you must never ever let him go without telling you about the Batuba Baskukun. The Skukun as the royal family.
Yeah.
Let's conclude there. And you'll combine it as you're talking. You'll tell us about Mojaji as well, which is a subject matter you know passionately. Let's talk about Khosia Yaba Bedi Vargas Kukun. Who was this man?
The Skukunes are a Katla people. Kiba Katla. Bajwa Hamakau.
Okay.
Mopitori.
The same place?
Yeah.
Okay. How about go Patrice Motshekga? Yes, they're from the same place.
Patrice's father, I wouldn't say he was my friend because he was elderly, I was young, but for some reason he liked me.
Yeah.
And then Patrice sometimes says, no, isn't it perhaps that you are fathered by my father? Because he liked you so much. And he also even believed that you must write the history of Vakata Vamakau.
Yes.
Now, when I interacted with his father said, no, Renarejwa Hamuno Mutapa.
Okay.
And Valobedu are our relatives. And there we are Koshin Mujaji. They came there, Patrice and his friends. But you see, I'm not surprised because when we go to Zimbabwe, on the western side, Mathole Motshekga land, unala Batswana mo. Babina Putu, Bakha, Babolene. They are there. And now, Wabonar, it's a dispersal point. Other people move there, Batswana Kabutswana. Babangwata directly. And that's why Khosia Mutapo says that the Mutapos, she is married to the Mutapos. Mar Uchwa Ampatlel. Wampatlel Gibakha Gibona Diput.
Okay.
Bare Habatlagam. Batsijimo Bagwena, Batsijimo. And how can level from Limpopo right down to Lesotho. How would say this place was populated by Bakwena?
Okay.
Who are the root community of Basotho Bamushwesh. So other people followed. But Baba Vapedi, apart from Vamaka Ubare, Bachuamuno Mutapa. Hape Bachua ka directly guri unale branch iloka Botswana. Yatla mo and settled in Pretoria. From there, unale var khoshing varge plelela teng abale problem. Abatsama mo via Limpopo. Mara ke dikhabu ke Batswana. So they changed their motupo, a totem, to Nuku, haba fitamola, barbabina Nuku. Mara, they are the same family, leba khatla ba Makau. And leba khatla ba Makau, una leba khatla ba Mamotlake, una leba khatla ba Maubane, and all these people, the same family, but all of them have a tracer. They come from the north. So at the end,
in the north, and the north is a different point to the north that we got to understand as South Africa.
Exactly, it's a different point. Now, then they have Baba's cooking via Limpopo, Bagreba Goni. Bagoni were Narvagoni, Rijwa Bugoni. Bugoni means north.
Yes.
So things converge there. Wanabo more northwest. Varge Bugoni Bupri. So which means batho ba northwest ke bakoni. Why ba re ke bokoni bo prima? So I think that we really need to truly rewrite our history.
True.
And there's a history beyond what is in our books.
Incredible. We'll do this again soon.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Your knowledge is amazing. Let me ask this: if you know where my people are from, Mashabela. I don't know if you have a sense of where my people are, because I know very little. I know where they are now, but I don't know where they're from. Excited about Jane Fairs. I've been there a few times.
You see, batho ba Mashabela, ba tswa ba le ka go Zanin.
Okay.
They came, bangwe ba settler go batho ka Bomphahlele, ba bangwe Askukung. So the family which knows that history very well, the family Amashishi. I met with them. I sat with them. They have a story. I asked them to write it down. I think they're working on that. Ba Mashabela le ba Mashishi is one family.
Wow.
Yeah.
I should get in touch with someone. I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guy.
Yeah. It's
guy.
Yeah.
Because I know it from a certain point, and that point is very recent. It is as recent as 80 years ago. I wish I knew long before.
No, that information is there, like a Khoshiad Mutapo, Una Lady Reto, and then which link ba Mashabela le ba Mashishi back to Halak. Lord, what's sitting no kaya odi. Moba kwena what's sitting home. So there's no doubt that they trace their origins to the north. That's why they were people from the north.
At the core of the history of people and the history of Africans in particular is migration.
Migration.
It's moving from one point to another.
And then what's a change
as they go.
Yeah. You know, for instance, Rena Valovedi, we say Rebalozi or Barozu Karanga. But when we crossed with the rain-making powers, and Batobaloba, Habaloba, then we become recipients of tributes. Rababalobedu. So Balobedu is not an identity. You know, Batobaloba Banyakapula.
King Oloba.
Oloba is to pay tribute.
Okay.
And Harle Balozi. Because people say we're great magicians. So identity has nothing to do with African identity. It relates to the special gifts that Pula lineage.
Yeah.
So at the end, if I say Kimulozi, Kimulobedu, it doesn't say that I'm different from any other African. Okay.
Yeah, you just acknowledge the gift you possess.
The gift,
and you probably find that in other tribes as well. Those that have that are skilled differently.
Yeah, you know, like in Botswana, there are people because they were specializing on iron making.
Yes.
And Bambezi, who went to Skukuniland, they were specializing in that. There are still fireplaces in Venda, local Palaburu. You see, Palaburu. They were mining copper and the iron things. So different communities have different skills. So they become, so that's why Palabura noto. Noto is like the hammer.
Okay. It's always ringing in that area.
Yeah. Palabura noto. Halla teku tsele.
Yeah.
They are busy hammering, producing the copper and all this. You go to Musina, Batwale, they were producing copper.
Yeah.
Before white people came, Now, they want to tell us that they taught us about minerals.
Yes.
But Moba Chwangwana, there are no minerals.
No, how did they know about minerals if they didn't have minerals?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you think they mean? Try to help me decode.
No,
this.
I wouldn't say I know.
Yeah, but let's try to decode.
But you see, the thing is, Mashabela, Topanama and Tupa Ekol. You know, even now, people want a phrase, Mongnam. In other words, acquire enough wealth so that you can feed your people. And it's a way of conscientizing the young people that work hard, build your own wealth so that you can build your people. Marabela itlagadi slogan Topanama. It's like maybe it's just about meat. But they use Nama because
it's wealth.
It's wealth and wealth kidicom.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so on.
On that wealth note, I want to wrap it up. Thank you very much.
King David Studio Podcast.